Medusa 4, also known more commonly as Medusa, is a planet located within Segmentum Obscurus which serves as the homeworld for the Iron Hands chapter of the Adeptus Astartes. While Medusa itself may not be as well known as the death worlds of Fenris or Cretaceia, which serve as homeworlds for the Space Wolf and Flesh Terrors chapters respectively, it is nonetheless an utterly unforgiving world where only the strong survive. Not only is Medusa shrouded in near-perpetual darkness, thanks to a heavily polluted atmosphere caused by near-continuous volcanic eruptions, which in turn have rendered the world extremely cold and bleak, but the surface of the world is known to regularly experience intense dust storms, which are capable of stripping a fully grown man down to the bone in mere minutes. The world also boasts a highly unstable geological makeup, resulting in Medusa being continuously racked with intense earthquakes, which are capable of creating and destroying entire mountain ranges, in addition to the aforementioned volcanic activity. This in turn has forced the world's population to develop a nomadic lifestyle out of necessity, often travelling within great vehicular clan convoys, with each clan frequently and brutally competing against one another for the few meagre resources that exist. Because of the world's frequent and intense tectonic upheavals, only a single permanent civilian settlement is able to exist upon its surface. This settlement, named Medusan, is only able to exist due to the presence of a series of ancient stasis generators located within the nearby Felgafi Mountains, which prevents the region from succumbing to both the world's tectonic and atmospheric activity. While additional pockets of geological stability are known to exist upon the surface of Medusa, these have long since been claimed by the Iron Hands. Despite the frequent and intense instances of tectonic upheaval, a number of notable locations that have been documented in the distant past are known to endure to this day, even if only barely. One location in particular has garnered an exceptionally high degree of infamy over the millennia, spawning countless myths and legends to the native Medusans. This region, which is called Spukari in the local tongue, is known more commonly as the Land of Shadows. To the native Medusans, the Land of Shadows is a dread and haunted place, often being described as a necropolis of metal and stone, a valley filled with the long-forgotten remains of ancient and horrific machines. It was here, according to legend, where Ferrus Manus, the Primarch of the Iron Hands, did battle with a creature known as the Azanoth, a great worm-like beast with flesh comprised entirely of living metal. According to the Iron Hands, the Primarch had personally collapsed the surrounding mountains to bury the valley beneath hundreds of tons of stone and debris, although whether Ferrus Manus did so out of fear or simply to prevent others from uncovering the horrors that lay within, none can truly say. In either case, access to Spukari is forbidden to all, both mortals and Astartes alike, save for those warriors of the Iron Hands who have failed the chapter in some way. In order to atone for their sins, those Iron Hands who are found guilty of failure will be sent on a pilgrimage to travel to Spukari and retrieve a fragment of the Azanoth's hide, an act that only a figurative handful of warriors have managed to accomplish in over 10,000 years. As well as this, there are a handful of other landmarks upon Medusa, such as the Iron Pyramids, in addition to a number of ancient Medusan folktales which have led certain elements within the Inquisition, in particular the Ordo Minoris known as the Ordo Astra, to suspect that there was once a substantial Necron presence upon the world. So could the homeworld of the Iron Hands chapter be, in actuality, a Necron Tomb world? While some have scoffed at this particular notion, there is plenty of evidence upon the surface of Medusa itself which could support the possibility that the world had once belonged to the Necron race. The first and, admittedly least understood of these, is of the previously mentioned Iron Pyramids. While it is widely believed that these structures were constructed by Ferrus Manus, as detailed within the book Visions of Heresy, it is worth noting that pyramidal structures are indeed a common sight upon Necron worlds, both in terms of their architecture, such as tomb complexes, and even for weapons of war, as shown with the constructs known as monoliths. However, given that many other races and cultures have also been known to construct pyramids of their own, such as upon the world of Prospero prior to the Horus Heresy, this piece of potential evidence is overall fairly weak and circumstantial at best. A far stronger piece of evidence, however, was located within the mountain peak of Karashi, the very site where Ferrus Manus had made planetfall upon Medusa. When the Primarch emerged from his gestation pod, as detailed within the novel Angel Exterminatus, he would find himself within a cavernous chamber that appeared to have been artificially constructed, although thanks to either the tectonic activity of Medusa or the impact caused by the Primarch's arrival, it was pitted with various cracks, fissures, and even open magma vents. The walls of the chamber were also described as being adorned with some kind of runic scripture and threaded with veins that pulsated with light. In addition, the Primarch would discover within the very heart of the chamber a large edifice formed from a dark, glossy, stone-like substance. These various descriptions given for the interior of Karashi would certainly appear to indicate that Ferrus Manus had emerged within a set of ruins that were Necron in origin. After all, many tomb complexes are described as depicting various runes and hieroglyphs throughout their interiors, which are often described as emitting an emerald light. The edifice that the Primarch discovers at the heart of the chamber also appears to be constructed from a substance known as Noctilith, or as it is more commonly known, Blackstone, which is in itself frequently described as being a dark, glossy substance that is stone-like or even glass-like in its composition. Not only this, but when Ferrus Manus laid his hand upon the edifice, the Primarch would inadvertently release what will become known within Medusan folklore as the Azzinoth. While it remains somewhat unclear as to what the Azzinoth truly was, the description given for the creature would appear to imply that the beast was, in actuality, some sort of Necron Canoptech construct, such as a Tomb Stalker or Tomb Sentinel, as shown with the following passage from Angel Exterminatus.
He stepped out to face the creature, a titanic worm with a ratcheting, segmented body that constantly rotated and reshaped itself with shifting, liquid ease. Its bulbous, arachnid exoskull was wreathed in metallic feelers, a trio of needle-toothed proboscises, and multifaceted eyes that reflected a million images of the naked figure before it. The great worm reared up, a towering monster of chromed steel, and loosed a howling bray of machine anger.
As well as this, the Land of Shadow, as mentioned earlier, is said to be filled with the remains of ancient machines, which, in conjunction with the chamber discovered within Karashi, could be describing the remains of long-dead Necron war machines, such as monoliths or aircraft, or even examples of Necron architecture. However, given the vague description given for the Land of Shadows, it's equally possible that the aforementioned ruined machines were relics of the Cybernetic Revolt, a great war fought between humanity and the Men of Iron. Given the evidence presented, it would certainly appear somewhat feasible to assume that the caverns of Karashi are indeed of Necron origin. But if Medusa is indeed a tomb world, then surely the Iron Hands would have become aware of the threat that lies beneath their very feet. Not necessarily. After all, there has been at least one documented case of a Space Marine chapter being unaware that their homeworld boasted a substantial Necron presence. One such example, as detailed within the 5th edition Necron Codex, is shown with the world of Bellicas, which was home to the first incarnation of the Emperor's Swords chapter. Despite having resided upon Bellicus for centuries, the Emperor's Swords were completely unaware that their world contained an immense tomb complex beneath its surface. This would allow the Necrons, upon awakening from the Great Sleep, to take the Astartes unaware, launching an assault that utterly destroyed the chapter. As such, it's not entirely outside the realm of possibility for the Iron Hands to also remain unaware of such a potential threat. However, while this would certainly appear to heavily imply, if not outright confirm, that the world of Medusa boasted some sort of Necron presence during a distant past, at least from an initial glance, this does not necessarily mean that Medusa itself is a tomb world. Given that the Chamber of Karashi appears to be one of the few strong pieces of evidence to suggest a Necron presence upon the world, if one chooses to believe that the Iron Pyramids are not of Necron origin, then it's possible that, instead of being a tomb world, Medusa had once served as a site for a Necron military installation or outpost sometime during the distant past. As detailed within the 8th edition Iron Hands Codex, the Ordo Astra branch of the Inquisition believes that the Senelus system, the planetary system to which Medusa belongs, served as a battleground between the Necron tier and the Old Ones during the course of the primordial conflict known as the War in Heaven. The Ordo even goes on to suggest that the nearby dead worlds of Thusa and Greia were themselves rendered lifeless as a result of this conflict. And not only that, but the dust belt between the worlds of Rion and Thenos is in fact the remains of a world that had been utterly obliterated by either the Old Ones or the Necron tier. If the Ordo Astra's hypotheses are indeed accurate, then this would appear to further support the notion of Medusa serving as a Necron outpost as opposed to being a dedicated tomb world. What also further supports the idea of Medusa being the site of a Necron military installation as opposed to a dedicated tomb complex is due to the world's natural geology. As mentioned earlier, Medusa is frequently racked with intense earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, which are caused by the world's overly active tectonics. This would appear to suggest that, unless Medusa sported a greater degree of geological stability during the War in Heaven, which is admittedly not outside the realm of possibility, the world would simply be unable to support a full-scale tomb complex upon its surface, as it would be swiftly destroyed. That being said, however, it is potentially possible that a tomb complex can incorporate a series of stasis generators to protect it from the world's various tectonic upheavals, similar to those which now protect the city of Medusa. However, if this were indeed the case, then one would need to ask as to why such protective measures were not extended to the chambers of Karashi if they had indeed been constructed by the Necrons. Not only this, but given how an ever-increasing number of tomb worlds have begun awakening from the Great Sleep in more recent years, then one has to wonder as to why any Necrons upon Medusa still remain within stasis, assuming that Medusa is indeed a tomb world. As such, it would appear that Medusa, despite having once had some sort of Necron presence upon it, does so no longer. Alternatively, perhaps Medusa was a tomb world during the distant past, but had ultimately been abandoned by those Necrons that once dwelled upon it. It's entirely possible that some sort of cataclysmic event could have triggered the overly active tectonic activity of the world, forcing the world's resident Necron population to abandon it in order to avoid destruction. Or perhaps the Necrons were simply driven from the world during the course of the War in Heaven, with the Old Ones forcing the Necron tier to abandon the Senelus system entirely for one reason or another. We may never know the truth. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.